This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project with your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up? Salvador Briggman here with the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. Wherever you are, wherever you're hailing in from, wherever you're listening to this podcast from, thank you so much, and I hope you're ready for some learning today. Got a great podcast guest lined up for you today. We're going to be talking about, number one, how they got funding. They raised 6 figures on Kickstarter, but with their first 2 projects, actually, they didn't do so well. Their first 2 projects raised a meek, $3,000 around there, and I don't mean that to obviously downplay their projects, but the third one that they launched surpassed $100,000 on Kickstarter, and it raised upwards of $147,000, a little bit over that. So they did something different with this campaign that they didn't do to the other projects. So you're going to hear and learn about that. Why is it that this one was so successful? Why is it that this one got so much funding and so many backers? And how can you do the same thing? How can you employ the strategy that they used to stand out, the strategy they used to get backers? And also another surprise, another secret, they actually did not have a video on this campaign. And I was just astounded. I've been educating about this topic for a very long time. And it's very, very rare that I see a campaign on Kickstarter that doesn't have a video and that does really well. It's kind of my bread and butter. I always recommend that campaign creators create a video to persuade people of the value of their project, to show them that they're serious, to engender trust, all that kind of stuff. Just from my own studying, my own research, my own interacting with thousands of creators, that is something that I've taken away. But these guys ran counter to my own experience. So they share with you, number one, why they didn't include a video, the advice for you if you are thinking of whether or not to have a video on your Kickstarter campaign. And I also sort of talk about why I think their project was successful despite the fact that they did not have a video. So a lot of great information here with today's campaign. Before we get into that, I also wanted to mention that there are a lot of great episodes, a lot of great things in the archives of this podcast. You can go back over 170 guests, 170 episodes, tons of information, tons of golden nuggets and strategies and tactics that you can apply for your own campaign. But if you want it all in one spot, and you want to just be able to look over a guide that tells you how to raise money, it has some of the best golden nuggets from people that I've interviewed. It has really that gold mine of information that you can use and you can apply to your own campaign. I think that this would make the most sense if you're in the preparation stages of a Kickstarter campaign. Now, I can't really help campaigns that are right now raising money. There are only so many things you can do. Only so many things like promotion, etc., that you can do. But if right now you are in the preparation stages of a Kickstarter campaign, you're thinking about launching an Indiegogo campaign, or you're vaguely interested in crowdfunding, you're just kind of learning about this whole new topic, and you want to gain access to some of the best practices for raising money. You want to see what other campaigns did successfully in order to raise money on Kickstarter, then this is the guide for you. You can check it out at crowdcrux.com/ebook. That is crowdcrux.com/ebook. And that guide has a ton of great information, a ton of great tricks and tips and all of that kind of stuff that you can use to not only blow past your goal on Kickstarter, but you can also then use to start your online business, to make it so that you have this online store. I think that Kickstarter is a starting point. It is a launch pad that you can use to build out an entire online business. So again, that is crowdcrux.com/ebook. Without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. John, I've been looking forward to having you on the show. You've had 3 different Kickstarter campaigns. Your last one doing awesome, looking to learn a little bit about what you've learned in terms of these projects, a little bit about the products. Your last one, The Last Unicorn, raised over $140,000 on Kickstarter. Congratulations. And also, thank you so much for coming on the show, despite the fact you have the stomach bug. Man, you're a trooper. Thanks so much.
No problem. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Totally. Which area of the United States or the world are you hailing in from?
We're in Boulder, Colorado area.
Oh, that's like a new tech area, isn't that? Like a lot of new innovation coming out of there?
It really is. There's a lot of, back in the 80s, IBM moved out there, and so a lot of auxiliary companies sprang up to kind of support that machine. And since then, they never really left. They just went more .com and digital. So we've got VMware and Google and Twitter and Microsoft, and it's a big mecca for the big companies because it's beautiful for one, but was cheap. Prices are starting to skyrocket now that everyone's wanting to be out here.
But. Oh no, that's awesome though. I mean, I've heard of a lot more Kickstarter campaigns also launching from Colorado, so it looks like the innovation is sort of getting around there. I would love it if you could just take a second here. Maybe you could introduce the listeners to this last product that you raised money for on Kickstarter, what it is, who it's for. Could you tell us a little bit about The Last Unicorn?
Sure. So The Last Unicorn was a movie back in the 80s. It was originally a book written by the author Peter S. Beagle and got turned into an animated film by the people who would later become Studio Ghibli. And it had a star-studded cast and music by America and Christopher Lee and Mia Farrow and all manner of famous people doing the voices on it back in the mid-'80s. And it kind of stayed a cult classic ever since then, but it's one of those things that like nobody really paid attention to ever since then. Mm-hmm. And then the author started going on tour and started getting this enormous feedback that everyone had loved this film and this book that he had written. And he was completely in the dark that he was so well loved and so well revered across the world. So fast forward a couple years, and we just picked up the licensing for it through ITV, a company in Europe. And because we love making merchandise for the things that are near and dear to our hearts, whether that's nostalgic movies or video games or just bringing cool projects to life. So we got tons and tons of categories in our licensing arrangement, and the first one that we were looking to tackle, just because it was such an in-depth one, was a tarot deck for people who like to read cards. And so we started doing the artwork. One of my employees is a very talented artist, and she's also a professional astrologer and card reader. So it was a match made in heaven for her because she loves The Last Unicorn. So I approached her with the idea one day. I'm like, hey, how would you feel about doing a deck based on this artwork? And she was thrilled and started laying into it right away.
Mm. That's really cool. I also was looking at the project, and the artwork is beautiful. Like, they look like very well designed cards. Love the artwork. It's kind of like cartoon style, but also it has a little bit, I think it goes beyond cartoon style. Like, there's a lot of shading and stuff. Looking at some of the unicorns here, it's kind of cool. Is this then your company, or when you say we, who are you referring to?
Yes, so I am the founder of a company called Geekify, and we build neat and unique projects and products. We started out doing tablet and e-reader covers that looked like legendary books. The Neverending Story, The Labyrinth, The Necronomicon, things like that. And that was kind of what started us out. And then since then, we've built ourselves into kind of a mad scientist laboratory slash production workshop, kind of building out all manner of interesting projects. And now we work not just with individual consumers kind of building their replicas and their props and their cool things, but also with movie studios and game development studios doing their product lines as well.
Okay, and for this company, how long was it in existence before you started to even think of using Kickstarter as a way to like fund these different types of products?
Well, pretty much as soon as we ever heard about Kickstarter, like, oh man, that sounds like the way to go, especially when you see all the successes that people have. But running Kickstarters is a very difficult process, as anyone who's ever done one can tell you. We ran.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
Yeah. We ran 3, one of which was mildly successful just because we pushed it over the edge ourselves. And then another one was completely unsuccessful and just never raised any traction. And this one, we were very lucky to have a extensive fan base that kind of did our advocating and advertising for us. And we put in particular stretch goals that really encouraged the fans to get the word out there so that everyone could benefit from the stretch goals that we were promoting.
And I just sort of want to underscore here, I think the first 2 campaigns, I mean, the first one was unsuccessful. I don't want to, obviously harp on the negative things here, but like you raised $3,000, it wasn't successful. The next one you raised about $3,000, was successful. But with this one, you raised over $140,000. So you were doing something, I imagine, dramatically different. You talked about the fan base here. How did you actually grow that or like tap into that with this last campaign?
There were a number of factors. So one, there's easily hundreds of thousands of fans of The Last Unicorn, so it's got that name brand recognition. We also got the author on board to endorse the campaign himself. There's legal contentions and a lot of the royalties that the author was owed never made it to him for various reasons. And so one of our pledges was that anything that we make, a portion of it will be going to the author. And so that was a way that a lot of the diehard fans knew that was the case, that he hadn't received the royalties they thought he was due. And so we just decided to pledge a portion of what we made to him. And so that got him on board. I mean, it was a surprise to him. We were just going to mail him a check and be like, surprise, we love you because you created this awesome thing for all of us. He found out about it and he was so touched that he actually offered to help promote it and to do signings of the decks themselves.
Oh, wow.
So that was our huge stretch goal, and that was why everyone wanted to jump on board for it, because you could get this, not just a cool deck of cards, but like this heirloom product to give to your kids, if assuming they grew up liking The Last Unicorn. So it really helped you have jump on.
Wow. That's awesome. I think it's really hard too to even like the fact that you're able to work off of an existing brand. It definitely helps you, I think, a lot. But at the same time, it's not like those people, like, how did you actually get in front of them? Like, did you start a fan page? Did you, ask the author to tweet out to their audience or share it via email? How did you actually gain access to the fan base?
Facebook is mostly our social media medium of choice. We have about 9,000 or 10,000 followers on Facebook and a little bit on Twitter and Instagram. And, the nature of things going viral is that it's so easy and happens so quickly. So we put up, a couple months ago, we were kind of gauging interest in the project. And so we made a post, kind of mysterious, just saying like, we're looking for talented artists and we're looking for people who are fans of The Last Unicorn. And if you're interested, send us an email and like a portfolio of your work to this email address. We got 25,000 organic hits just from that. No advertising, no anything put into that because people have that recognition of the brand. So once we actually launched the campaign, we did a couple promotional cards to show off the artwork and the style and kind of go over what it was that we were going to be doing, and released it onto Facebook. And we started getting tens of thousands of hits and reshares right away. After that, to kind of keep the fire going, we threw a couple $100 at Facebook ads and then did our regular and routine tweeting. And we did a podcast or two for interviews and just kind of did our best to get the name and the brand out there of who we were and what it was that we were wanting to do. And the rest just kind of took off itself.
Nice. Wow, that's a lot of good traction there, a lot of good attention you were getting. The other cool thing was I was looking through your comments and I read one comment that says, "I can't believe we hit $125,000. Way to go, guys. I'm so happy this was successful. Can't wait to see the other campaigns you have in store." So I think a lot of people that supported this probably felt like this was sort of their own project, or that they were buying into and supporting something that they love. Like it wasn't just like you were trying to make money or something off of this. It's really becoming a part of the community, or an expression of like that they love these characters or this artwork.
That is absolutely the nerve that we try and hit with the fans. Is basically anything that we make at Geekify is something that we would want to own ourselves. And so we're our own biggest audience. And it just so happens to align that most of the people who grew up in the 80s like we did will also share that same sort of nostalgic factor. Whether it's a handbook for the recently deceased from Beetlejuice or it's a Arin pendant from the Neverending Story. It's like that's the kind of stuff that we like having in our collection. And we just found other people that enjoy it as well.
Mm-hmm. I was a little bit confused. So I was looking through your campaign page for The Last Unicorn, and I don't know if it was taken off or just for some reason my browser is not working correctly, but I couldn't find the video. I see an image here. Did you upload a video or did you
No.
take one down?
Actually, we had never done a video just because...
You never did a video? Oh, wow.
Never did a video. And I know that that's taboo in the Kickstarter world nowadays. When we first started doing Kickstarter, that was not essential and that was not really... it wasn't crucial to the process. And there wasn't all that much that we could really show in a video because all the art is still in concept form. So it wasn't like we had interviews with the author or really much about ourselves to show off, because this was just an idea that we wanted to present in a very methodical way. But the images, the still images, would show that a lot better than any sort of video.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. I get a lot of questions on the video, and sort of my default is always yes, upload a video. But this campaign is running counterintuitive to my advice, and I kind of love that because that's like another data point. Could you share with the listeners, if someone's out there and they're doing a similar kind of artwork project, or they're looking to do a board game or something like that, do you believe a video is essential or not essential? And would you, going back in time, have uploaded one, or you're happy with how the campaign went?
I think that videos can hinder sometimes. Like, you go and look through the campaigns, and there's a lot of really done videos, but there's also the slightly more awkward feeling like, hey, I'm this person from this company, and we wanted to do this thing, and there's a certain level of production value that I think people expect out of the videos on Kickstarter, and if you're not prepared to do that level of quality, then, that's a whole other thing to be a master of. You have to be good at video editing, you have to be good at filming, you have to know what shots to take and how to make it look and feel in a way that actually advertises your product as opposed to something that just kind of shows it off.
Yeah. I think the difference here too is that, particularly with your project, you have the endorsement of the author. So the trust barrier there is sort of already created a little bit. Like if you're just some random person trying to raise money, it's going to be harder to get that sort of level of trust with the backer. But because you have sort of the author's seal of approval and these people trust the person that made this kind of stuff, I think it also helps with the trust for your campaign.
Absolutely. We have a strong history. We're about 5.5 years old as a company, and so we've got a strong background and history of knowing what we're doing, and people can look back over our full portfolio of work and say, okay, these guys deliver what they promise and they do cool stuff. And so the combination of the two gives us personally some brand recognition, so people can say, oh, they're not just another dream chaser on Kickstarter looking to make a quick buck. But they can see that we're passionate about what we do and that we're reasonably good at what we do. Yeah,
very true. So you had a lot of great stretch goals with this campaign. They were all I think they were all unlocked. You hit all of your stretch goals. So after you run a campaign, you've raised over 6 figures on Kickstarter. There's a lot to be said for the actual fulfillment of these rewards. Actually getting them out to backers. And if you've never, I know you guys are more of an established company. How did you deal, or how are you dealing with the fulfillment aspect? Have you learned anything about this sort of component that we don't talk very much about for Kickstarter campaigns? I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
Absolutely. And so for the past 5 years, we've had to work all the kinks out of shipping processes and production and fulfillment and just making sure that a polished product is what's going out into the world. So that's a lot of experience that can be really hard to have if you haven't been doing it for several years. Like, those kinks are things that pop up, and we do Kickstarter fulfillment for other companies. We've done a couple video game publishing, and that's shipping 500 to 1,000 units out into the world, so that knowing who your vendors are, who's actually producing your work, knowing what kind of quality control is going into it, being able to sort through 600 or 700 orders and making sure each person gets the right thing. So we use ShipStation, we use Google Drive, we use just a suite of tools that we really like to keep organization with, to kind of keep an eye on what has been shipped, what's still outstanding, sorting through which SKUs we have to use, and just making sure that the right thing makes it to the right hands in a quick and efficient way. When we first started, we were using a spreadsheet in Excel to keep track of orders that we had to manually enter from our Etsy page.
Oh boy.
So that was, those things can't scale. And nowadays there's many awesome tools that just import everything in a live feed and the update with shipping and tracking information as soon as it goes out the door. And it's so much easier if you've got a little bit of money to throw at the tools rather than just reinvent the wheel each and every time.
Did you use any of the tools to coordinate the surveys and all that kind of stuff?
So this is our first time running the campaign. Normally we take it from other people once they have successfully run a campaign. They hand us their spreadsheets and their reward tiers, and we kind of figure it out to send out into the world. This time around, because it's us, we have that extra step of doing the surveys ourselves. So that's problematic, can be problematic, because it's one more thing you have to pay attention to. You have to word properly. You have to understand that people move. And if you're shipping something 6 months out, they may not be there. And so you might waste a lot of money or a lot of time tracking down these people who are no longer where the surveys had them listed a couple months ago. We're also using BackerKit as a way to expand and extend the campaign after the fact. So that's another learning curve afterwards, but we see it used on so many campaigns, we figured we'd give it a try because we can keep collecting pre-orders that way in a tried and true and trusted method that a bunch of campaigns have used. And they have their own brand recognition. Everyone knows BackerKit as they're good guys, they've got good software, and they can expand and enhance a campaign in a way that just, linking to our website for pre-orders couldn't do necessarily.
Yeah. I have a few other questions, technical wise, nerd wise on the marketing and such. But before we get into that, I did want to ask you, so for you personally running this campaign, what was the proudest moment, or what did you really enjoy about seeing this? I imagine you didn't expect to raise this amount of money. Was there a moment in time when you were like, wow, this is awesome, or this is exactly what I was dreaming of? What was your favorite part of this project?
I will say that, that those moments in movies when a kid gets so excited at a birthday party, it's like they can't hold it all in. When we got funded in 9 hours, that was ecstatic. And then to see the numbers keep jumping up dramatically. So it was, a 1x, a 2x, a 3x of what we were asking. And that excitement honestly became a little toxic towards the end of it, because there's only so excited you can be and that you can stay over a 30-day period. So it was awesome to hit these milestones and to hear the comments from the fans saying how excited they were to see this thing happening. But at the same time, it's like, oh man, it's another $10,000. That means we've got this much more customer service to do for the next 100 backers. And
success is such a burden, right?
It is. And that's something that you don't realize. And to be honest, that's a very good problem to have. But at the same time, it's wow, this is raising $50,000. Let's see how far we can take this. And so when it crossed 100, that was ecstatic as well. And then just watching that last couple days as it spiked up, it's are we going to make 150? No. Are we going to make 140? Ooh, yeah, we did that. So we were taking bets at Geekify in the workshop of what we were going to end at, and it surpassed all of our bets.
Within the last 3 days, I was looking at your KickTrack statistics. You guys raised about $27,000 in the last 3 days. Why was there that big jump towards the end, do you think?
Because we were offering the prices that we were only for this Kickstarter, so it wasn't kind of an early bird special, but if you get in with the Kickstarter, you get all of these awesome and amazing stretch goals. We also, for the last 48 hours, just pumped probably $200 or $300 more into Facebook ads to kind of put it out there. Whereas for the past 30 days, it had percolated quite a bit. throwing it out with more ads meant that it was in the eyes of, I think, 50 or 60,000 more people.
Mm.
But also, too, a lot of people don't want that fear of missing out, or they didn't have enough money when they first heard about the campaign, and so they thought, okay, well, I'll come back to it before it ends once I've got money in the pocket.
Yeah.
So there's a number of factors there, but normally you see kind of that hockey stick at the very beginning as people get on board. Then it kind of flattens out and plateaus, and our plateau was fortunately like a continuous upward incline, and then normally you see another hockey stick right at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a very sort of common trajectory. I usually call the middle the Kickstarter slump of death, because it's hard to maintain that momentum. It's hard to stay excited and get people still raving about the product. You guys definitely do have that incredible, I think, linear growth pattern where it's almost like it looks like if you had even extended it further, you might have even seen more pledges. But again, you have like backer kit and stuff to capture the pre-orders there. I did want to ask one thing here. So in terms of the Facebook ads, I get a lot of questions from people who are looking to experiment with Facebook ads and using it for their campaign, getting more pledges. Do you have any advice on the front of Facebook ads, what you would tell someone else just getting started, what worked for you, anything like that?
If you haven't done it before, Facebook does do a promotion where you can get $50 or $60 of free credit if you put $50 in. So it's a good way to kind of double your money for a small scale. Identifying what and who your audience is also really key. So when you go to create your audience for your Facebook ads, it asks you, who do you want to target? Do you want to target men, women, what age demographic, what locations? For us, we kind of looked at, English-speaking countries, and then looking at the age demographic that would have grown up with The Last Unicorn, or who might be having kids introducing them to The Last Unicorn for the first time. Then we also kind of narrowed it down to what are some common interests for Last Unicorn users. So whether they've liked The Last Unicorn on Facebook, whether they like the Dark Crystal or the Labyrinth, for instance, as kind of a similarly veined movie. If they like to read, if they like 80s movies in general, if they like illustration. So we were able to dial it down pretty specifically and still wind up with an audience of a couple 100,000 people. And then we put money into it, and I'll be honest, we were a little lazy. The post that we had put up on our Facebook saying that the Kickstarter had gone live, we didn't make a specific separate ad for Facebook. We just used that one because then we could track the full history of that post. We could see all the shares, all the mentions, all the comments. And that's another thing I would not necessarily recommend doing for somebody else, because you probably want to make your ad look exactly like what it needs to, put in all of the information, like fine-tune to what you want just the ad to say. But we got lucky, and like I said, I wanted to track that same information and just see how it did out there, and we were not disappointed.
I was looking through your own personal website, or the company website, Geekify. You have a lot of really interesting products here. I mean, I feel like it'd be cool to run a business where you have all this kind of like fan swag. You have really interesting storybooks, lots of cool jewelry, like all this kind of stuff related to stories and characters. And it looks really epic. For you, what is the part that you like most about the business? Like, do you like the creative side? Do you like the marketing? Do you like being the entrepreneur and sort of building out these different business systems? What do you enjoy most about this kind of a business?
All the above. I mean, Geekify is a company that regularly throws tons of spaghetti at the wall just to see what sticks. And we've had a couple sort of mad scientist projects. So we used to have a very active research and development team in Geekify, and that was coming up with new products like our fur and leather dice bracers. That was a digital LED display built into this armor piece that you wear on your arm.
Oh yeah, that looks so cool. I'm looking at that.
So you program in your dice modes, like your D20s, your D100s, D6, whatever, and then you shake your fist, you pound the table, and it comes up with your random rolls.
That is awesome.
Totally
That's great.
To notice, but you never know who's going to notice it. And we actually sold about 100 of them to ThinkGeek a couple years ago. And then some of the portfolio of other books that we've done opens up interesting doors for us. So we did something for Bethesda and for ThinkGeek earlier this year for the Elder Scrolls Online. We did the Dark Brotherhood limited edition ledger, and that was really cool to build that for them. We've been working with Topatico. We've been working with the McElroy brothers. We did some stuff with Patrick Rothfuss and the author of The Name of the Wind for his Tinker Pack. So it just opens up interesting doors to have this wide range of products that we work on, so we can show that off. It's like, well, maybe books aren't your thing. Maybe the jewelry's your thing. Maybe pins are your thing. And so we can find what works for each new client, and we can choose and pick and choose the clients that we work with as who's a nerd, who's a geek, and who resonates with the kind of company that we are and the kind of stuff we make.
I mean, I definitely think I fall more into the geek category. Like, I think it'd be awesome if you can have like this fur arm thing and you're playing like Dungeons and Dragons or something at a bar and just like slam your hand down and like you have a roll with this fur arm thing on you. It's kind of cool. For those that are then interested in getting help with fulfillment, that is something that you offer. If I have, a project card related or gaming related or something like that, do you offer help with fulfillment?
Absolutely. And not just fulfillment, but actual production as well. So a lot of what we've done has been working out the kinks of how do you go from concept to fully developed product. So we can help with that as well. And we'll find your vendors, we'll find everything, and we will get the finished products ready for market. And then the fulfillment side of that is once everything is in hand, then we can actually mail it out to people all over the world. And then you don't have to worry about it. And that's half the battle is, getting the idea out there, raising the funds is one thing, but as companies like Glowforge can attest, like the production is very, very difficult, and getting all the kinks worked out of a thing, and that's kind of where we specialize in, is doing this product design and development to take an idea, hammer out all the bugs, and then get it ready for the market. And then shipping it out is honestly the easy part for us because it integrates seamlessly into our workflow anyway.
So if I have, for example, intellectual property, I've created a set of characters, or I have something like a comic book, and I wanted to do a Kickstarter campaign, kind of like how you guys did with The Last Unicorn, like I'm an author, more of a creative type. Is that someone you would work with to create a campaign? I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign, or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
Absolutely. So, I'll use the example of the video game publishing that we've been doing. So it's the golden age for indie games right now, and so a lot of people are creating these games and getting, $500,000, $1 million on Kickstarter. But after the fact, they promise all these rewards and they don't know how to actually produce the tangible items. And so we reach out to some of these companies and they say, like, their honest God response is, oh, thank God someone can do this for us. Because now in the digital age, everything is about what you can transfer in bits. It's not what you can make in the physical world. So we kind of take the burden off there in actually making the thing. And that's fun for us because we can kind of scope out our clients and say, oh, this game looks really cool. We'd love to work with these guys. And to actually have a hand in bringing the whole project to life as more than just it's something we can be passionate about. So it's not just we're making the reward, it's we're taking what they've done and making it better in a way that enhances the game as a whole.
I see. The other cool thing is that it becomes a part of your online store, I imagine, like some of the merch and stuff on Geekify. So for these products that you're selling on your own company website versus Kickstarter, have you learned anything marketing wise that you're going to start using for your own or for the products on your store? Like, have you learned anything running this campaign? Like, maybe you're going to do more Facebook ads, you're going to do more influencer outreach or something. Are you going to apply anything to your own products?
Slightly. So most of what we did for this campaign, we already knew kind of going in. I don't know that we necessarily learned new things from this campaign of how we approached it. And we were very fortunate because we didn't have to go above and beyond. We could just use the mistakes that we'd learned from the previous campaigns of how to word things, how to update, and just making sure there was enough content on the Kickstarter to actually carry it forward. And then doing all the customer service of answering all the comments and questions. But having this many backers and this level of interest means that these are now potential fans and potential people to add to our client base. So we were able to see who was sharing out the most and kind of who was getting the most traction for us. So we can reach out to those influencers now and say, you did such a great job for us on the Last Unicorn. Would you like to help us or be kind of part of our team of influencers for other projects that we release? And Last Unicorn can be a niche, but it's also, if you like that, there's a good chance that you liked a lot of other things from the 80s too. So there's a lot of overlap with, if you're a fan of one, you're probably a fan of the others. And we can use that help and guidance in getting the word out there for future projects.
Very, very true. It's sort of like building that community out and then using that as a launch pad to do other things and to grow the business in other ways. The last question that I have for you here, John, is you had an epic Kickstarter campaign. You've raised a bunch of money. You've learned a ton. If you had to boil this all down to one message that you want to share with the listeners, could be a word of encouragement, could be a final tip, something that you think is a silver bullet or something for getting the campaign funded. I would love it if you could just take a chance to speak directly to the listeners and maybe even share something you wish you knew going into the campaign.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to fail. Kickstarter is a great way to validate your ideas in the marketplace and a great way to see what the fan response is. But there's so many other factors above and beyond just that. It's getting out there in front of enough people. Maybe it was a bad week at Kickstarter because they won't staff pick you. Maybe there's too many other campaigns running. Maybe it's the time of the year when people are shopping for the holidays, but they don't want pre-orders. They want stuff that's actually shipping then. So that's where all their money is going to. So don't be afraid to fail and don't be afraid to try again, because, with a barely successful campaign and one that failed completely, it's hard to have any sort of hope that the next project will blow you out of the water, but you never know just how much of an element of luck and timing it is. And there's so many magical factors that you never see affecting it. So don't be afraid if the Kickstarter fails the first time around and you have to run it again, or you can learn from anything that you've done the first time. Don't be afraid to seek out people who have done Kickstarters before and ask them what worked. Get people to talk about your Kickstarter. Find the companies who are running parallel campaigns, and don't be afraid to cross-promote with what you're doing. So just in general, just talk, network, communicate, and don't be afraid to fail.
And learn as much as possible. Well said. People, if you want to check it out, it's at the Last Unicorn on Kickstarter. And where should we send people to? Geekifyinc.com, your website?
Yes, that's Geekify Inc, like incorporated. Okay. I think I'd probably watched Monsters Inc. right before that. I'm like, that's a good way to end the work. Also, the Geekify domain was taken at the time, so.
Oh, I hate that. Man. People I feel like whenever you have a good domain idea, someone goes out there and registers it, or if I type one in and then I check back next day, it's gone. I feel like it's some kind of conspiracy or something.
It's the worst. Yep.
Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I look forward to any more campaigns that you run, and thank you for just sharing all of that great advice with the listeners.
Absolutely. As a heads up, we are going to be doing future campaigns through Kickstarter with The Last Unicorn as well. So this just happened to be the first one that we did because the assets were far enough along to actually start showing people. We'll be doing plushes and keychains and posters and all manner of kinds of things. So for the people who didn't back the tarot deck, because it's a rather niche product, there are other things that are more general appeal. So we'll hopefully have more feedback for you on what was successful with this next campaign that's a more general appeal than we do with this one that's kind of a niche thing.
Very cool. We'll have to have you back on then.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified Podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman, and I love this podcast episode because it just ran so counter to my own experience with Kickstarter. And it just goes to show you that I don't necessarily always have all of the advice and the tips. While yes, I have studied this crowdfunding industry for a really long time, since 2012, I've nailed down a lot of the best practices. There are still always these campaigns that still sort of befuddle me. And that's one of the reasons why I love to do this podcast, is because I get to hear directly from people in the field that are currently raising money, the things that are working, the things that aren't, and you get to also listen in on these calls. I think it's awesome that we can see sometimes these quote unquote unicorns, no pun intended, that end up raising money with no video, or that have a really unique strategy, something that I haven't thought of before, or that no one has thought of before, so that you can take advantage of that and you can use that with your own campaign. And now, if you do want access to this guide, and you're tired of listening to all of my different podcasts, and you really just want it all in one place, and you want a step-by-step in terms of how to raise money online with Kickstarter, some of the golden nuggets that other people I've interviewed have shared in terms of what it's like to raise money, what they would do differently, what worked for them, and also my own advice, the things that I have learned from my many years in this industry, seeing many different types of campaigns, you can check out this guide at crowdcrux.com/ebook. That is crowdcrux.com/ebook, and you'll gain access to that. You'll learn a bit about not only the tricks of the trade, the best practices, but also the things that you need to do if you want to successfully raise funds and really move people on that continuum from being like vaguely interested to actually being a backer of your Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign. So that's at crowdcrux.com/ebook. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Thanks for spending a little bit of time here with me today, and I'll see you next time.